a living, if you want to call it that.
New York has many attractions, there's no doubt about it. For many years, this has been a logical place to locate big business. The banks are here, stock exchanges, and the international trade that takes place through the New York port. However, in the last year, many things have become difficult. As an example, a simple telephone call can often take a half hour to complete. During the last garbage strike, we waded through carbon paper to get into the office. And now, the final straw, the power companies have gone so far as to schedule brownouts, meaning we must decide between running the computer and the air conditioner. The things that have made New York an attractive place to do business are still here, the people, and lots of them. But it is those people that are really running this company out of town.
Let me see if I get you right. You want to know how I feel about ecology? We're here in New York, baby, like any place else. It's pollution, bad housing, overcrowded, and filth in the streets. I'd like to know where the hell you guys were, because we've been here, and now all of a sudden you're concerned. And that hogwash about overpopulation, well, that's your problem. You must remember that we're the minorities. And we've been dominated by you people for years through sheer weight of numbers.
Now, the East has had it. Down the tube. Man, I don't even want to think about where I grew up. They say Manhattan is tipping over a couple of inches a year. You know? One of these days, sploosh, right in the East River. Well, that's about the only solution to the problem as far as I'm concerned. Meanwhile, you can just consider me an atom in somebody else's population bomb.
There's an old saying that people would like to produce the greatest good for the greatest number. That's maximizing two variables, both welfare and the number of people. And the mathematical principle is that you simply cannot maximize for two variables, that you can only maximize for one. You have to decide which one. This is involved here. We have to really decide, do we want to produce the most number of people in the world, or would we prefer to have a smaller number with the greatest welfare, the greatest good for each individual person? In the case of wild birds, what you might call sort of a built-in responsibility works in this way, that each species of birds produces only the number of eggs in the clutch that is right for that species. Maybe 5 is the right number. Well, those that produce 4 do not leave as many offspring, but those that produce 6 per clutch also do not leave as many offspring because they're more likely to die of starvation. And so by natural selection, the correct reproductive behavior is selected for in birds.
But men have not acted like birds for millennia. Scientific developments, like the birth control pill, suggest that man can defend himself from the harsh laws of survival by using his technology.
We have adequate technological means for avoiding having children, but the question is, will we use them? That means our attitudes have to change. I tend to be optimistic here and hope that we can, but I may be wrong.
In the late 1960s, the United Nations had this to say about the responsibility for population control.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights describes the family as the natural and fundamental unit of society. It follows that any choice and decision with regard to the size of the family must irrevocably rest with the family itself and cannot be made by anyone else.
It leads to potential trouble right now and in the future even more so.
I have here a loaded gun. Since it is mine, it therefore follows that I have the irrevocable right to decide how it shall be used.
That is an inappropriate analogy. If families are properly educated, they will understand the need to control their reproduction.
But we know from the studies that have been made all over the world that every place, families, couples, want more children than is necessary for the good of the entire nation, or even desirable for the good of the entire nation. So if you allow the families, by technical means, to achieve precisely what they want, they will want too many, they will have too many, and population grows out of control.
But what?
I'm sorry, but he was about to make an appeal to conscience. If only people would obey their conscience, there'd be no problem, right? Wrong. First of all, you must realize that almost no society on earth rewards conscience. If a man obeys his conscience against his own self-interest, he's condemned as a fool. Secondly, there are those whose consciences speak to them differently, in fact, oppositely in matters of population control. But let's avoid the discussion of religion and politics. Let's examine the problem mathematically. Now, in this column, we have the families with conscience. Let's call them homocontracipients. Each one of these figures represents a two-child family. They realize that the way to stabilize the population is to produce new life at only the rate necessary to replace the old. Over the years, the group of homocontracipients will not change much in size. Now, over here are those who, for whatever reason, are without a conscience, as we define it. Let's call them homoprogenitivists, because they breed as much as they like. Now, each of these figures represents a three-child family. You can see what happens in a mere 5 generations of breeding at that rate. It might take hundreds of generations to eliminate poor homocontracipients, but the end result, assuming we all survive that long, is obvious. In fact, by appealing to conscience to control population, you're setting up a selective system that ensures the elimination of conscience from the human race.
We have to change people's wants, and in the end, this may not be enough. At least we should recognize this possibility. It may not be enough, and we may have to actually pass laws restricting the number of children that people can have. We have mechanisms that respond to overpopulation, and in the final analysis, we don't have to worry about population control, because there will be population control. By mental troubles, eventually, if nothing else, by crowd diseases and starvation, these processes will come into play, but at such a level of population that we'll all be acutely miserable. And the question is, are we willing to exert conscious control so as to keep the population size at a more comfortable level?
We must give up some freedoms in order to keep others of more value.
We must give up some freedoms, or they will be taken from us by natural processes.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form.
In the beginning, the heavens and the earth. And the earth has been the same size ever since.